All right, the Canon R5 C. I have had it since last July. We're heading towards a year now. I put out a lot of videos when I first got the camera and had to do so much testing. I kind of just filmed a lot of what I was doing with the testing. And I get really, really busy doing commercial work, paid work, and it's really hard to make these videos, and I haven't gotten to give updates on how awesome this camera is. But I have some good commercial work that's out there now. It's been released, and so I can share it and kind of showcase some of the visuals that I'm getting out of this camera and how well it's working in commercial environments. The main one that I want to kind of go to here is the new 70 SS video. This is a video that I did for Trans Am Worldwide. They're a client of mine and have been for the last decade. They're the worldwide exclusive licensee and builder of the Trans Am. However, they have over the last 2 years been building this 70 SS, and this is a tribute to the 1970 Chevelle. Ended up being a 16-minute product video. So it's really, at this point, I don't even consider this a product video as much as it's like a piece of entertainment. I started this project over the course of 2 years. I did not have the Canon R5 C through that whole stint, but I did have it for the last stint. And that's when the car came together after 2 years of being built. So product shots, both in a lit environment where I'm using my lights and lighting it inside of their facility, and also driving shots. Almost every driving shot are the Canon R5 C, and I mounted it onto the Tilta Hydra Alien Arm system. I'll get into more detail about that in another video, but just check out these images that I'm getting out of the Canon R5 C. This is the only camera I took with me to the portion of the shoot that was in Vegas at SEMA. When you're watching the video, I've used a combination of cameras. The Canon R5 C is just one of them, so do not think that the entire 16-minute video is just the Canon R5 C. It's also got a Red Epic Dragon. It's also got a Sony FS700 in there. It's got a Canon EOS R, the original model. And then all the drone shots are actually done with the Mini 3 Pro, and I want to talk about that too, but man, I mean, I can't believe how good that little drone is. And again, we'll talk about that in another video. There's a lot of things I want to talk about with this project over the course of time, but we're going to stay focused on the R5 C. It is an amazing camera. All the product shots that I got were in 8K raw light. The light is really powerful. The dynamic range that I can get back out of the camera is surprising. You do potentially, according to charts and other videos that I've watched, because I haven't done the most technical test with dynamic range, but I do believe you get an additional stop to stop and a half of dynamic range by using the RAW instead of the XF AVC codec that is also an option in the camera. Everything that I filmed that you see in the video at SEMA, that was again all the R5 C, but it was all XF AVC 4K. So just the driving shots that you see in the full video and the product shots were in 8K. However, I also use the red for the product shots as well, and that was filming in 6K. And the Canon R5 C, it does produce a different look. While I feel that I can get them to match pretty well, the R5 C, it is capable of producing the cleanest, crispest digital image like out of the gate. Like it's nature, the nature of the codec itself, and like once you start grading it and putting it where it naturally wants to be, I feel like it automatically gravitates there. I feel like the red automatically gravitates towards a filmic look, which can be a little bit more played down. Like there's something about the boldness of the colors and sharpness that's just immediately there on the Canon. And a lot of times with cameras that are cine cameras, like, you know, a red is a cinema camera, the color spectrums are already a little bit more dialed down. Now you can get it to pop and be completely crisp and digitally. I'm just pointing out, once you start grading it, like where it goes to almost immediately, to be honest, it's like, it's so natural to the Canon that I kind of thought that maybe that's something I wouldn't like before I got the camera, because I've kind of identified that with Canons, really mirrorless cameras in general, the end result is always kind of a digital feel. But there's times where I'm realizing like I really actually want that because it feels super modern. And in the case of this product video, I really wanted it to feel super modern, other than the really, really filmy looks that I go to. And that's kind of another conversation too. There's these quick little tangent shots that happen that look like it's an old film camera from behind the scenes and stuff. That's a completely different thing, and I can, you know, that's another thing to talk about in grading. But as far as just a crisp image, I mean, look at this image. I mean, I'm not trying to toot my own horn here. I'm just trying to say, like, once you start adding some lights and giving this camera what it wants, and you go to grade it, it's crazy. And the low light ability of it is a really big switch from the red as well, because it's base native ISO. You can go between 800 and you can go to 3200, and really flexible when you go to boost up another stop of exposure in the raw codec. So you've already filmed, you're making an assessment or judgment call in the grade afterwards. You bump it up by a whole stop to a stop and a half. I think around a stop and a half, that's when I start seeing like noise start to emerge in the shadows. But that stop is like pristine. You can boost it all the way up a full stop and it's like completely gradable. The noise in the shadows are still not there. It's really impressive. And then I haven't used the camera much past like, I think 6,500. 3200 is a really big jump for me because with the red, I'm usually lighting it for around 400 ISO. That's where I get my favorite images with the red Epic Dragon. Personally, this is the Epic X model, so it's not the newest red. I know the Gemini in particular is capable of being better in low light. However, that's a 5K sensor, much newer body, and it's more expensive and stuff. But you know, when I'm playing with this Canon, it makes it hard to want to spend more than 5K on a body. And I feel like that's only going to be more the case over the next couple of years. I'm not hearing as many people talk about the Canon R5 C as I thought. I thought that this was going to be like a camera that everyone was going to grab and everyone's going to be getting this look, but to me, what I'm seeing online is more people are still gravitating towards Sony, which is great. I love Sony. I have Sonys. I have old Sonys. I made the switch to Canon and Red a while back. There's no wrong decision here. You know, you can go with Canon or Sony. They both produce great images. But the Canon I felt like more immediately and easily matched with the Red, and I really wanted to build around the Red. And the at the end of the day, when I see side-by-sides, me personally, there's just something, there's like a little edge of dimensionality to the image, that there's a little bit more pop, and it's not just a color thing. There's something about it, and I honestly think that what it is it's the codec. I think that because the Canon codecs are beefy. Sony has really gotten down a great compression rate, but there is something about that compression that makes it feel just a little bit flatter. And the Canon, because it's just got that bust codec, it's just a little bit more dimension. And to point out, on all these driving shots, I filmed all of those with one lens. I don't even, the only RF lens I have is the one I'm using right now. And it's the 50 millimeter, and it's the 1.8. I mean, it's like the cheapy lens that I'm throwing on there. And this is how good it looks. I'm filming an XF AVC right now on the Canon R5 C in 4K. And I think it looks pretty good. I mean, I just threw two lights together real quick. I mean, this isn't like the best setup, but still, this is a great image that just comes right out of the gate. But the 8K is what I was filming in light with doing the driving shots. And the reason I'm mentioning that and the lenses is because I filmed everything with a 16 to 35 millimeter Canon EF lens, the USM2, not even the USM3, because I wanted to make sure that it was compatible with my Red when I bought it. And to be honest, it's a Japanese lens too. So it was like a cheap buy that I found on eBay, and all of the shots are filmed with that. There was a couple of shots I did with the Red that are on a tripod, like during the mom launch during the video. And then I also did the Mini 3 that's coasting along with it. But the reason the 8K was so important, sorry if it's tangent, I'm really doing this on the fly in between projects while I'm capturing data, but I just wanted to share this with you guys. The 8K was so important because when you're filming and you're trying to get the most stable footage that you can on car-to-car driving, you want to use a wider lens. But then you really have to get those cars to get super close to you to fill out the frame. Having the 8K, I'm using a wider lens. I'm able to crop in double. So the footage ultimately came out pretty stable, especially on smooth roads, it's stable. But some of the canyon stuff, that was some really bumpy roads. It was too shaky. Now, it wasn't too shaky in respect to rolling shutter. I have not had issue with rolling shutter on this camera. I've seen some people comment or ask questions about the rolling shutter on the camera, and I'm just telling you flat out, it is like, it's practically non-existent. I'm not saying that you can't, I mean, any reasonable amount of shake, it looks very much like a global shutter. I'm not having a rolling shutter issue. It looks very much like, I mean, I just don't even think about it. It has not been a compromise on any of the footage, whereas the original Canon EOS R, it has tremendously bad rolling shutter. I mean, you cannot hold that camera and film handheld. Everybody tries. I think I'm getting good footage, and then every time I see it in post, I'm like, I can't use this. But this is not the case for this camera. One of the advantages that I also want to point out about using an EF lens, and I don't think that there's an alternative to this unless you're using screw-on front filters, but the variable ND filter Canon RF to EF mount, it's got that ND filter, the variable ND, before the lens happens. Any lens you put on it that's an EF lens is going to have that variable ND filter, and that's just super valuable. I mean, that's basically like having internal ND filters built into the camera. By being able to use the ND filter like that with the EF lens, and then having the option to crop and post, and the flexibility of the codec, the color rendition, and the dynamic range actually working out, it's like consistently surprising me how much dynamic range I'm being able to get out of the image. I am just floored at how awesome it was, and it was a fantastic travel camera in comparison to trying to travel with the Red before. Much smaller footprint, and it worked out great at SEMA. Being able to pack everything in one bag, it's been a really long time since I felt like I wasn't being met with extreme compromise to do that, right? Like, oh, I'm leaving the Red, I'm gonna take a smaller camera with me, but I didn't feel like there was any compromise. I felt like this is exactly the kind of camera that I want to have in this run and gun situation for SEMA. And it's what I need to use on the Tilt-A-Alien arm system. The RS3s plain simply will not handle the weight load of my Red. Then I got the ND filters, I got the autofocus. I want to be able to have autofocus and remote controlling the Tilt-A-Alien arm with my phone, sitting passenger seat, you know, so it had to be the Canon, and it worked out pretty dang awesome. So if you're thinking about the Canon R5 C, it's definitely a contender to consider. I'm hoping that the audio to this sounds okay. I'm actually testing a new microphone right now. I normally do a boom mic overhead, but in this case, I'm actually doing, there it is, my lav mic. This is a Senken COS 11D. It's just a highly revered lav mic that is used on TV and film. I just got a couple of them for the first time, so I'm pretty excited. And I'm running it into a cheapy little external well, it's a lav mic recorder, but it's the Zoom F2, and so it's not even wirelessly sending the signal. And that's actually the way that I did all my lav micing for that whole project with the 70 SS. Is anytime you're hearing a lav mic, sometimes there wasn't one on, so the audio gets a little thin in some areas because it's just the on-camera mic in a really crowded environment. But when you're hearing a lav mic, I'm using either the Zoom F2 or Tascam DL11s, but they were all with the mics that came with the unit, which is going to be a real cheap mic. This COS 11D is, I'm just running it through its test. I did some interviews with it yesterday that I haven't go through yet, and I'm hoping that it sounds okay. So this is part of the test, and I had this hair here the whole time. You guys didn't even tell me, so I have to reshoot this whole thing. All right. I will catch you guys on the flip side. Take care, man.